Welcome to this episode of Random Life, and your host is Salar Monova. Today, live from Bishkek, from Kyrgyzstan. Unfortunately, I needed to return home so quickly because of the illness of my mom. So that's why we are doing a lot of different things to help her get to the hospital and yeah, get her taken care of. So that's why I am doing it from here. But the topic that I want to talk about today and that I want to focus on is the topic of how to be in charge of the outcomes we like and we want and desire for our lives. Because I feel like we're currently living in the time frame or period where we cannot rely or trust the employer or the system that we have been trusting all these years for our safety and stability and for our desires. And because we have learned so much to trust the system and employer, therefore many of us may not have learned how to trust ourselves to create the results and outcomes in lives we want to. And therefore, the result of these two factors is happening that we are so feeling stuck. We're feeling so in freeze mode. We don't know which direction to go, where to go, who to trust, and how to trust. And even if we are willing to trust, we feel like there is a lot of competition, a lot of things happening, and therefore we just feel we don't know what to do next and how to move forward. And therefore, the skill that I think is the number one skill that I'm working on currently myself as well is how do we be in charge of creating the outcomes, desires that we want to for our lives, whether it is the impact that we want to work on, whether it is being with our loved ones or starting families, whether it is choosing to live in countries we want to, whether it is the financial freedom, whatever it is that we're desiring, how can we be in charge of them irrespective of what happens with the system? How can we be in charge of doing what we love and living the life we want to, no matter what's happening around us, not letting the circumstances dictate what we choose and what we don't choose, right? And that's really the topic that I wanted to do this webinar this Friday, and I will put the notes in the show notes as well. And therefore, I really want to use this opportunity today in this random life to look at what is happening when we keep feeling like the responsibility for our lives and how we want to live is still with the employer or with the system, how that route is showing up and turning up in our lives, and then what is happening when we are in charge and when we take over charge of how we want to do things, how the outcome of this looking like. And the problem is that oftentimes many of us have been programmed to work in systems well and work for the system and rely on the system for our safety and stability and well-being. Therefore, we now find ourselves in situations where it is so hard to provide for those things ourselves because we haven't learned how to do that, right? So that's why I wanted to dedicate this webinar to talk about what happens when we really keep relying on the system for our well-being and safety, and how that route is going and how that route has taken us to where we are currently, versus what happens when we feel powerful enough to be in charge of how we want to live our lives and how we want to create the outcomes that we want to, no matter what happens outside of us. Then I feel like that skill alone will help us not only be good at making decisions about where to go and which direction to choose, but also powerfully going and implementing those directions and learning how to build that direction instead of spending a lot of our times that we might be currently spending energy and time on resisting the reality, which is this is not how it should be. Maybe we're also spending a lot of time in the confusion of, I don't know what I do, I don't know what I want, and I don't know which direction to take, right? Or it might be a lot of doubts about whether this route will work, that route will work, and all of this coming from this essential skill or lack of it, where we keep using either the system as a blame and scapegoat for everything wrong with it, or we keep blaming maybe ourselves for how we haven't a long time ago, and therefore using that also as a reason, as a safety point, so to say, for us not to move forward, right? So therefore, how we feel like certain things may feel like safe things to do, like being confused, indulging in a lot of emotions of anger and hatred and blaming and complaining and all of those, uh, or I don't know what to do, I don't know where to go. All of this may feel safe to do and continue doing, except that it will not give us the safety we are so desiring, right? The only thing that can give us safety and stability is us being in charge of what we're creating and what we are wanting to create, and us feeling confident that we can create that. That's the only thing that will give us the safety and stability we want, which we were so used to abdicating to the system before, and understandably so. But now I feel like it is time that we don't continue keep waiting for the system to do something and get its things together and then employ us. If that's the desire, amazing. But even though we still may freedom within us to say, create whatever the outcome I want. I don't need to depend on the system, right? So that's why the webinar that I want to do this week is really about, okay, if we cannot rely on the system, if we can't really rely on ourselves, then who are we going to rely? And my suggestion would be, how can we learn to rely on ourselves to create the outcomes we want, irrespective of whether we work for the system or not, so that we can keep our independence at all times and our integrity and everything else that comes with it, versus keep using the lack of systems responsibility, or lack of its, or like the lack of clarity or chaos that keeps going on currently, keep using that as a reason why we can't rely on ourselves, and therefore not create the certainty that we want to pursue the direction that we choose. So if you feel like you are in this place of stuck and freezing mode and don't know where to and how to and all of this, and you just feel like, okay, I'm confused, or I'm resisting the reality, or I'm blaming the system, I'm trying to rely on the system and system won't let me. If you are in that place, then you really need to come to this webinar where we really look at, okay, how can we get away from that paradigm of, I want the system to take care of me, or I want the things to be the same as before, or I don't know how to without the system. Rather, learning how to be independent of the system and being our own solutions for whatever we are pursuing, rather than keep wanting to rely on what we used to know, but we may no longer may rely on it, right? So that's why, if you feel like this is the webinar for you, then absolutely come to this webinar, where I will be also sharing my own tools of how I'm working on this ever since I transitioned, and how I continued working on that skill of being so confident in myself and my abilities to transition and get to the outcomes that I want to, irrespective of how disastrous the world is, or how difficult the world is and how hard it is. Because if we just keep staying in that how hard it is and how difficult, and we don't know and where to go, and then we'll just prolong the freeze state, and the more we prolong the freeze state, the more it will become difficult to get out of it, right? So therefore, the sooner we learn how to be independent of the system, emotionally, financially, physically, in whichever the way, even if you want to work for the system later on, learning that independence, I think, is a crucial skill. And in order to do that, I really want to help you build this tool set of being able to rely on yourself, being in charge for the outcomes you desire. So if that is you, absolutely come to my webinar. I will put the notes and the link for registration in the link below. And I hope to see you there to talk more about in depth of what you can do moving forward instead of keep stalling yourself and robbing yourself of the opportunity to pursue what you would like to. Have a beautiful week, everyone, and I will speak to you.